So, hi everyone, and welcome to the Design VC, the show where design meets business and creativity meets capital. And I'm your host, Andy Budd. Each week, I'll be talking to a series of founders, investors, and designers about the role design has to play in the world of startups. And today, I'm really excited to be joined by Sam Stevenson, a designer turned co founder of Granola, one of the hottest startups in the UK at the moment. So, Sam, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Andy. Thanks for having me.
Really excited to talk. We've spoken to a few sort of tech companies been around for 10, 12 years, people like Intercom or whatever, but it's really exciting to see someone that's still in the explosive phase of their journey. So I'm really looking forward to getting stuck in. But for people that don't know Granola, I can't believe there's anyone out there that hasn't come across you, but could you just give a quick sort of intro as to what you're all about?
Yeah, so Granola is the line we usually use is it's an AI notepad for people in back-to-back meetings. So what that means is it's designed to feel very familiar, like Apple Notes or any note-taking app you're used to, but it's much cleverer under the surface. It basically will listen, transcribe to the conversation you're having, and because of that, you can do all kinds of interesting AI stuff on top of it. So you can ask it questions during the meeting about what's going on. It will enhance any notes that you write during the meeting into a much more useful summary afterwards. And then as you use it, the idea is over time, you kind of like accumulate this big treasure trove of context of like your kind of memory of all of the meetings you've been in. And that becomes a really useful thing over time.
That's a really great summary, and I have to admit I'm a fan. I'm a user of Granola with my coaching and my advisory work. I often use Granola as a great way of summarising the sessions we have, and I've written a whole bunch of personal kind of templates that shape the output into a way that is meaningful for my purposes. So it's a lovely tool. Also interesting, like we've only met once before, but it was a group dinner, and I think actually one of the people in the dinner got out, it might have been you, got out Granola and tried to capture the whole kind of conversation of about 10 people and did an amazing job. So the diarization and the kind of like the audio quality is brilliant. But I'd just like to take you back to the sort of the founding days. Can you tell us a little bit about sort of where the initial idea came from?
Yeah, totally. So I think we got to the Granola idea because I was in a period of my life where I quit my previous job, which I was like solo designer at an early stage company building a note-taking app as it happens. Personally, I like really enjoyed working on that kind of tool. You know, like you do a note-taking app well, it's like becomes very deeply embedded in your life and you rely on it for a lot of stuff. That was a very satisfying kind of product and problem to work on for me. So I was kind of like, I'd quit that instead of getting another job, decided to just hack on stuff by myself for a bit, partly to get better as an engineer. Like I kind of had done a bunch of website building, but not much full stack development before, and I wanted to get better at that.
And just to be clear, was this in the age of vibe coding or was this before vibe coding? Did you actually build it yourself?
I guess I've always been like code curious. I learned a bunch of HTML, CSS and stuff as a teenager, like as I was kind of learning about websites and how to do, how to make stuff on the web. I've been a freelancer for a lot of my career. And one thing I really liked about that was every now and again, I just not get another job in between jobs and like mess around with stuff myself. So I've had a couple of like periods in my career where I've had a few months where I just kind of dedicate myself to hacking on side projects and like learning about writing code and stuff like that. So I was like, I built a bunch of React, like side projects with React, I think at that point, but never like a fully working app that I could rely on. And so that was the interesting challenge at the time for me, was like, could I do the whole thing to the point where I was like a reliable enough app that I would use every day? Yeah, and so I had a few months of like hacking on building my own personal like note-taking app for myself, which was a lot of fun. I got kind of obsessed with it. Nobody else used it, and I still use it today, but it's purely just for me. But yeah, I was doing that, and I guess like a few months into that, met my now co-founder Chris, who was Chris was like explicitly looking for a co-founder, and I think found me through a meetup group for people into tools for thought. Is I guess the name of the niche, but it's like
a co-founder speed dating.
It was the group definitely wasn't designed for that. It was designed for nerds of note-taking apps and like. But yeah, I think that was his way of finding like someone in the right kind of space to work with. We hit it off like as friends, and we started hanging out a lot, and we were, I guess, both tinkering with our own things, both exploring what we wanted to do next. Chris was really interested in GPT-3 at the time. This was like slightly before ChatGPT. And I was obviously hacking on note-taking apps and have been thinking about that for a while. And I guess broadly the like fuzzy idea that was interesting to us was like, it feels like these LLMs, like it's clearly magical. It's clearly going to change so much of the like of all of the software we use day to day. And it feels like there's a really interesting interface problem where no one's figured out like how are we actually going to interface with these things and how are they going to fit ergonomically into our lives. And that just felt like a really fascinating problem and one we wanted to spend our time thinking about. And so, it took us a while to get to like meeting notes and the kind of the shape of the product we have today. But that was the initial space that excited us.
I mean, it's fascinating. I think around the same time, there were lots of meeting sort of summarization apps out there, but they were all basically apps that would join a call as a participant, sort of very little interface, capture the recording in the background and then basically email you a transcription. Whereas I guess from what I'm hearing from you, you started as a note-taking app and then the AI element kind of like found its way into the note-taking app as the technology caught up and as you met your co-founder. So you seem like you had a very different form factor from everybody else that was working on this problem at the same time.
Yeah, I think so. I think like I would characterize it as like I think really what we wanted to build was like the future interface for how we do knowledge work or something. It's like it's a very lofty way of talking about it, but like that was the ultimate goal we were interested in. And I think we actually kind of begrudgingly decided the first thing we needed to do was become a really good meeting notes app. Because there were so many others out there and like, it's just a really crowded space. But I think there were a few things that gave us conviction there. Like one was just as we talked to lots of people about their work life and about where the pain was and what sucked the most, remembering the things you promised and then acting on them after meetings still came up a ton. And even among people that used one of these other meeting summarizer things, it just felt like, you want to build painkillers, not vitamins. And actually this was a real like potential painkiller for a lot of people. And two, like I think we had an inkling of this when we started and now I feel it in my bones, but like AI is like, if you want to be able to do work with AI, the AI is only ever going to be as good as the context that you give it and how well it like understands what's going on in your life. And for most people, so much of our day is made up of meetings and talking to people. And like, I think for any AI to do well in the working world, like it's got to be in the meetings and understanding what's happening there. Yeah, those were kind of the reasons we got into it. And yeah, figuring out, how we differentiate ourselves and how do we stand out from the pack of all of the other meeting note summarizers was definitely a tricky thing at the beginning, especially for fundraising. Like I think we kind of believed we had a different product vision, but convincing other people about it was tough.
Well, this is what I wanted to ask you because I was just curious, like what those initial fundraising conversations were like. Just being completely honest, like I genuinely think that if you'd have come and pitched to me, I probably would have had a similar attitude, which is like, there's lots of people already doing this at the moment. Like, how and why are you different? So, what were those early conversations like, and how long did it take you to find someone that bought into the same vision?
Yeah, I think it was a journey, the fundraising stuff, and for me it was totally new. Chris had a previous company, Socratic, so I'd kind of been through a few rounds of this before, but it was a real steep learning curve for me. But I think over the process we kind of learned that like I think the leaps people had to make to believe in Granola was basically like, one, you got to believe that like AI is going to change all of work tooling, which I think basically everybody was there at that point. Two, you got to believe that this like interface problem hasn't been solved yet. And I think you had to believe that specifically for us because Chris has a product background, I have a design background. Basically our argument was like, there is a thing that nobody's figured out here. And like a lot of the problem is like an interface and design problem. And so backing a product person and a designer to go chase after it that's the right set of people to go do it.
I would agree, but I'd imagine a lot of VCs would go, this is an AI problem, and actually I'm expecting a whole bunch of AI engineers, and this is a business and sales problem. So I want a load of marketers to be on board, and what is a product and a designer going to bring to the table?
Yeah, it's true. And a lot of people said no because of that. Like prior to fundraising, we'd been working on it for probably two months or something. And most of that time had been like a lot of open-ended talking to people and understanding their space and how they work currently. And then a bunch of prototyping. And I think from the talking to people, we had pretty good conviction that one, like the kind of existing set of meeting summarizers was like not doing it for people. There was a lot of like, oh yeah, I guess I've installed this thing. I never really go look at it anymore. Like it's not actually very useful to me. A thing we observed a lot, which was like really stuck in my head, was people would use their company would tell them they should use one of these meeting summarizers, and so they would have it join their meetings. But everybody would still keep a piece of paper on their side, and they would use that to write down the things that really mattered to them. And so, the tool was actually missing the most important thing, which was like your couple of things that you thought were important. Yeah, so it's, these tools are missing the mark.
I think for me, there was also a bit of awkwardness. There's social awkwardness. Whenever I'm on a
Yeah.
call and someone's bot kind of joins, I don't know why, but it feels a little bit kind of weird and obtrusive. And there's always a conversation around like, do you really want to have the bot? Should we ditch it? And back in when all of those kind of tools were blowing up, like quite a lot of people would say, oh, I installed this thing and I can't get rid of it. It's almost like sort of malware. Like I don't want it on anymore, but every time I have a call, I can't disable it. And so there's an awkwardness, which obviously Granola doesn't do because it's not using that same kind of model.
Yeah. Maybe to our detriment. We've been very anti all of the growth hacky, like kind of like all the behaviors where the product kind of latches onto you and doesn't want to let go. Like we've been allergic to those, and maybe could have grown faster if we'd gone for a few more of those. But yeah.
So you're out there, you're pitching. Do you remember like how many pitches you did in the end?
I think Chris did most of the first calls. I think he probably spoke to like 30 odd investors, something like that. I think over a short amount of time. Yeah.
And how many sort of term sheets did you get? Was there a bidding war, or were you kind of like struggling to get it over the line? And how was your experience? You said your partner was doing the initial calls. Like when you were brought in to pitch, like how was that for you?
Yeah, it was a learning curve. I think, I don't know. I feel like pitching is this weird dance where like you have to be genuine, but also you have to like sell a pretty lofty vision, which is like, honestly, like you only like 50% believe to be true or something. And like, because who knows like how things are actually going to pan out. You have to like paint a picture of like one possible version of the future, which seems really exciting. But the reality is you're then going to go back to work and like actually navigate the mess of the real world and find your way to something good. So it took me a while to get comfortable with that, and like I don't know, it's just intimidating. You're like speaking with these super accomplished people who work with people you really look up to, and the idea that you should be taken seriously by them took me a while to feel good about. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, fundraising is really, really challenging. As you'll know, a VC fund will maybe get, like 5,000 or more presentations a year. They might only talk to 500. They might only invest in 25. And so the numbers are stacked against you. It's really, really intimidating. You've got to speak to lots of people. And again, a lot of them will have a very fixed view of the industry. A lot of them will be saying things like, well, isn't this kind of industry already sewn up? And so, but you managed to convince a few people to kind of come on that journey with you. So like, post investment, what was the next kind of like 6 months sort of like for you, like building the team, building out the product?
Yeah. For us, it felt like the company really started once we raised the round. Like before that, we were it was the two of us like coming up with an idea and coming up with a story, that we could go tell to people. And fundraising was kind of the moment where we did that, and then we incorporated the company after that. We got an office space after that. Like that's kind of where it got real. I mean, the absolute first thing for us was to find a great engineer to work with, because I was the technical one of the two of us, and I'm not that, wasn't that technical at all at the time. I can do a lot more with vibe coding now, but like I was very limited in what I could build, So that took a while. We found Andre, who was like brilliant, like the dream first engineer to have on the team. I think that probably the next year actually it was like just continual like trying to like find users who would talk to us and would be up for trying our thing, and then giving it to them, and then watching them figure it out live on a call, then studying how they used it, through analytics and stuff, and then trying to check in with them and learn as much as we could about how they were using it, and just trying to keep a really tight feedback loop. And and then iterating all the time, trying new things in the product and seeing how that felt, and just rinse and repeat again and again and again. I think we incorporated the company in like March 2023, and we launched the product on May 2024. So it was like, just over a year of like incubating the version 1 of the thing before it went out.
Were you getting pressure from your investors to go faster, to launch earlier, to start getting that kind of like traction going? And were you sort of pushing back, saying, no, this has got to be perfect?
We were, yeah. It turned out to be helpful pressure. I think we wouldn't have launched as early as we did without that pressure, and I'm really glad that we got that push. I think Chris and I are both. We really like the crafting, the building the thing, and so we're kind of at risk at any given time of like polishing it too much and not putting it out. Yeah, but we did. Our investors were actually, they were great. Like part of our pitch when we were fundraising was like, you're kind of placing a bet on us as the right people to go solve this problem. And if you believe that, you've got to believe that like product building and design and stuff is not a linear, predictable process where you put in resources and you get a response out. It's like a messy, meandering thing, and you don't really know how long it's going to take to get to a good solution. And if you get into bed with us, you kind of got to be up for up for that. And so, yeah, like Mike, our main investor at Lightspeed, was like super supportive of that, and it's been great to work with. So, yeah.
Amazing. So one of the things I love about products that are developed or created by people from a product or a design mindset is they do want it to kind of launch and launch at a high level of quality. And I think in a market that's moving faster, is quite saturated, you need to have something that is different. On the other hand, there's the whole attitude of MVP, get it up, it doesn't matter if it's a bit broken, it doesn't matter if it's a bit clunky. And so it sounded like there was a bit of a tension there, but maybe your designer brain was wanting to be perfect, but maybe the pressure from the VCs meant that it kind of launched. Like, if you hadn't had that pressure, it might have taken another 6 or 9 months to get to market. So that sounds like a really good combination.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. And I think on that like there's definitely a tension. And I think we had this really helpful push from an angel investor early on who was he was like, this tension exists and everybody struggles with it, where like, should you make your thing good before you put it out, or should you put it out and then make it good while it's out in the open? And basically his argument was like, everyone thinks of putting it out as this big moment, but really like you put it out in order to get users, in order to learn how to make the thing better. And that doesn't need to be like a huge public song and dance. Like you can count getting 5 of your friends to try it and getting feedback from them as like putting it out. And so we had like a working version of Granola that we were using on all of our meetings, and that a handful of our friends were using on all of our meetings kind of from day one, like basically immediately. And the thing was really, really crap. Like it used the speakers from your laptop, so you couldn't use headphones. It had no database, so you couldn't actually store any notes. You had to just copy paste them out and put them somewhere else to take them afterwards. There was no authentication, no login. Nothing was secure. Like it was a really bare bones thing, and like it was our friends using it at the beginning because like you kind of got to just want to do us a favor to put up with that level of shit. But it let us like focus on the really hard problem of like trying to find the right interface, and kind of kick the can down the road with all of the more predictable stuff like authentication, infrastructure, security, all of that. So, yeah.
So you've built a good product. You've iterated it over kind of 9 months or a year. It's working really well. You launch it, and day one, millions and millions of customers come flowing in, I presume.
No, exactly. Yeah. I'm really pleased with how our launch went. By happy accident, I think we ended up with a lot of investors and like founder friends using the product at kind of towards the end of the closed beta period we had. It meant that on launch day, our whole marketing strategy was basically to lean on our investors and our early users to tweet about the thing we were announcing. And it worked great for us because between them, they had a really big following. There's quite a lot of like influential people in that group. So we had a good amount of attention and traction like on the first day. And yeah, it's tiny compared to like the numbers we have now, but like it felt like we were really proud of what we'd done, on the launch day.
The reason I sort of slightly sort of tongue-in-cheek joked about the numbers is like a lot of founders have this idea, if you build it, they will come. There'll be you launch and that's the end of the journey. And actually, often after your friends and family and your investors come in, suddenly then there's a little bit of a lull, and then you've got to go, okay, well, how do we deal with that? Is this by building more features? Is it by figuring out marketing? Like, what was the sort of the post-launch feeling and go-to-market strategy? Did it just click and immediately out the gate, or was there a lot of kind of work to kind of encourage people to give your product a try when they were already probably using one of your many competitors?
Yeah, for us, it honestly, like, we've never had like explosive moments, but it has been continually strong kind of since day one. With hindsight, this was like cost us a few months in building the rest of the company out. Like we were sitting around kind of waiting for that slump to come and not wanting to like count our chickens. But the product did just keep spreading by word of mouth organically. And I think because of that, we kind of realized that we had product market fit like several months later than we should have done. But yeah, no, it did just keep going up and to the right, which was kind of nuts to experience.
I was going to ask you about that. I mean, obviously, the first few months or years, even like a lot of startups expect to get product market fit in 6 months, and often it takes them a year or two. It sounds like you were pretty quick. Like, what was the first inkling that you had that, okay, we're really onto something here?
Yeah, I'll say actually, I think I always talk about our launch date as like a big thing, but I think in terms of like the journey of the product, I would argue that like product's been on a continual journey since day one, and I think the launch date was just the day that we like allowed anyone to come and start using it. And so I think we were very like deliberate about was we wanted to know that the thing worked and that it was retentive and people liked it before we opened the floodgates to everybody else. So like honestly, with hindsight, I would say we even had product market fit before we launched, because the signal for us that we should launch was that we had 100 people coming back day in, day out, using the thing heavily, relying on it. And, it's a tiny group of users, but like all of the behaviors and the signs were there that it was going to work at a bigger scale.
I think you're probably right. I mean, again, the fact that all your investors were using it, I mean, investors can be incredibly critical, and often they won't even use the products that they've invested in. So the fact that they were probably using it for meetings and pitches, I think you're probably right that you were one of the few companies that probably had product market fit out of the gate. And it sounds like the growth has been sort of relatively organic rather than lots of kind of fits and starts. I'm curious in terms of like product decisions. When I've used Granola, I've looked at the product and thought, this is really cool, but like, wouldn't it be even cooler if it did the notes live? And you talked about that recently. You said that this was actually something that you started with and then you rolled back. I just wondered if you could explain that kind of story and why you made that decision to not have live updating.
Yeah, this was we were obsessed with this idea for like the first 6 months probably. It felt obvious to us at the time that like AI is with you in the meeting. AI should be like writing the notes for you in real time during the meeting. It feels like so sci-fi and like kind of obvious. So all of the first 6 months for us were like pursuing different interfaces for like real time taking notes during the meeting. We tried like GitHub Copilot style like tab complete thing, where you'd like type a note, hit tab, get it to fill out the rest of the note. We tried one where the whole interface was just you mash the space bar whenever anything interesting gets said. We tried things in between that. We tried like you write on one side of the screen and the AI interprets what you're writing on the other side of the screen. Tried lots of these things and really wanted it to work. And I think like in the end, there was just, we went through enough cycles of it not working and like picking apart why it wasn't working to kind of come to the conclusion that there's kind of a fundamental problem where like we want our tool to help you be more present in the meeting and spend more time making eye contact with the person you're talking to and understanding what they're saying. And when you write notes, that's fine because your fingers can type while your eyes are doing something else. But as soon as the AI is writing for you, you can't help but like check its work, and like make sure that it's getting the right thing. And that it was just incredibly distracting. Like however we sliced it to be kind of having to evaluate what this LLM was doing on the side of your screen all the time.
I think you're absolutely right. I think, when I thought about it, like initially my desire was to want to have live note taking. But if you're in a one-to-one meeting or group meeting and this thing is constantly doing its magic, it's going to be pulling you out of the meeting constantly, particularly if it's not quite getting things right. Or I guess also if you're wanting to annotate those notes, like then things are jumping around. And so it's probably quite brave to take a feature which was one of the early driving features and go, no, actually we should pull this out, or we realize that this is not the right solution. So kudos to you. One of the other things I'm kind of curious about is the name Granola. I'm just wondering, like, if you'd been called like Chatty Notes or Note Taker Pro, do you think it would have been as successful, or just is there something about the name that kind of actually has really helped with the branding and positioning?
I think the name has been great for us. Yeah, yeah. It's a pure happy accident. It was like a placeholder name that we threw in at the beginning with like no thought whatsoever. Granola, the product, is a few things, right? It's like if we do it well, it's like a companion that's with you throughout your whole day, and so it needs to feel like comfortable to be in and like a nice, it's on your like a nice thing that's on your side. It also deals with incredibly sensitive data, and in an ideal world, you don't want the user to be thinking about like the fact that there's like scarily sensitive data in there, but you do want the user to feel like they can trust it and that it's secure and all of those things. And so like, I think the name, the kind of like lighthearted but positive, playful but not too playful name is like, has been really good for us. Yeah. Yeah.
It's nice, it's friendly, it's approachable, it's memorable. It's not trying to be clever. I see so many people that are trying to create names that have some kind of deep meaning with the product. Like, oh, we're gonna pick a name that actually in kind of another language means something that's related. And I think Granola is just kind of it's really simple. It's really really memorable. So yeah, I think I would like to think that's a big part of its approachability. You've recently had a redesign as well. How's that been? I mean, that must be quite scary, going a product that's going so well and everyone's really loving it, suddenly deciding we're going to change a bunch of things. Like hitting that kind of launch button, that must have been terrifying, risking losing a whole bunch of people. We've all seen these kind of big redesigns. I remember when Deliveroo redesigned and people were up in arms. They're like, well, I'm never going to use the product again. I miss the kangaroo logo. So how's that been?
Yeah, we pushed the button on Monday. It's like we were recording this on Thursday. It's been a hell of a few days since then. Like by the time we pushed the button to do the rebrand, I think I was like in it and convinced it was a good idea, and like I kind of been through the mental journey already. So I'm sufficiently like convinced that this is the right thing to do. That most of the criticism has bounced off in the last few days, which is good. I think I would have drowned in it otherwise. But it was a real dilemma. I really I guess I dragged my feet with this for a long time on like whether to do it and how to approach the brand and stuff like that. Because I think everything we have on the brand, like we had on the brand before, was kind of like thrown together by me in a few sprints. When we needed a website or when we needed an app icon or whatever. And there's like basic thought gone into it, but nothing groundbreaking, and it definitely wasn't like a fleshed out system. And I think as we've tried to do more on the marketing front and the storytelling, we have more surface area to express the brand. Like we don't have the tools to be able to like make granola show up in a way that feels granola-y in all of the different places. So yeah, I guess a few months ago the dilemma was like, we definitely need to do something. Is it like we take what we have and we just work internally on fleshing it out a bit into more of a system? Or do we take an opportunity to do a full pass and think about it from first principles? And yeah, I don't know. I felt like the hard part was that like the granola brand is really loved, and I think we knew that before the rebrand, but I think we really know it now. And like I think a lot of that love is like it comes from the product experience, how granola feels to use, and maybe from what you see of us as a company. And I think the old visuals like somewhat supported that, but I don't think they were like really pulling their weight. It's not like, if you just look objectively at what we had before, it looked very generic and like any other SaaS company. And so yeah, I just felt like we could do much better, and there was going to be a cost to like pulling the rug from everybody. But I ultimately feel like we could get to something that was much more ownable, and we could have a lot more fun with and like be much more expressive with. And that felt worth it. I think it will be worth it in the long run.
I think rebrands are really tricky, but also really important. I think a lot of the time people don't understand the purpose of a rebrand. Sometimes they just think it feels a little bit kind of ad hoc or almost like kind of like repainting your house when you get bored of it. But for a lot of the time, a rebrand happens because somehow the brand is no longer pulling its weight, as you said. It doesn't have the ability to project in different directions. It's limiting the creative in marketing. It's holding the kind of the website back. It's holding the product back. It doesn't have that flexibility. And a big part of a rebrand is creating a system, a language that gives you a lot more options to kind of play with. And so it sounds like that was kind of one of the main reasons that you went through the rebrand. It wasn't just a whim. It was a strategic decision to give you more opportunity to kind of explore different areas.
Totally. Yeah. We like I think one of the main tipping points for me was like we hired our first marketers on the team, and so wanted to start doing things as simple as like Instagram ads or whatever. And suddenly you got this question of like, shit, what do we put on the ad? What are the words that go on the ad, and what does it look like? And so much of what we like the initial stuff we have has come from me, and so I feel like if I sit down and come up with stuff, I can do an okay job at coming up with the things because it all came from me in the first place. But like we need to get to a place where you can like give a really smart, really creative person a high level direction and then let them go wild and create really cool stuff like from that brief. And we didn't have that, we didn't have like the core like ideas and the principles that we all agree we stand behind, so that like smart people can go and be free to go make up good stuff from that.
I don't know the sort of full story of the rebrand because, like you said, it's really fresh. Obviously, I guess you've gone through a few more rounds of investment. You've got some money in the bank now. Were you tempted to fly over to New York and get Pentagram to do the big whole thing, or like find the kind of the latest kind of coolest kind of brand designer?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we did a version of that. We worked with Ragged Edge, who are all of the, we kind of like polled around the office among all the designers on like who we respected the most, and that were basically like top of everybody's list. And they also were heavy users with the products, like before we knew them as personally. So they felt like a really good fit. And we did debate a lot, like, should we do this internally? There's a spectrum from like fully doing it ourselves to like getting a freelancer to come be in the building with us and work on it together, to like working with an agency externally. And it just felt like we have such an opportunity to be like a really iconic, well-loved brand. And I don't trust that if we did this internally, we would put enough resources behind it to do it justice, and so like, working with an agency was like the way to get a group of 10 really, really great, designers, copywriters, whatever, to think about it for a few months. And I think we have a better thing for it.
I mean, coming from my previous history as an agency background, and I do understand the value that agencies can bring. Having someone come in with an external perspective who can kind of take you on a journey, and I think there's a lot of difference between designing interfaces and designing brand architectures that are work and expandable. It sounds like you had a really positive experience with Ragged Edge. So if another founder watching this was looking to go down a rebrand, you'd point them in their direction, I presume.
I would, big time. Yeah. I do like the hardest bit was like the first month or something. We've like lived and breathed what we think granola is for like years, and so like getting on the same page about what the principles are we feel good about standing behind was tough. I don't think that was Ragged Edge's fault. I think that's just like it's a hard thing to get one group of people to like believe the same things as another group of people. And I like once we kind of got to that point, then everything flowed pretty easily from there, and the stuff they did was phenomenal. So yeah.
So I'm curious, so where are you now in terms of like the size and scale of the company? So it started with the two of you hired an engineer. I assume there was kind of like relatively steady growth. Are you now sitting on a team of 100, 200, or are you still kind of a small tight group of people?
We crossed 50 a couple of weeks ago, so we're like 53, something like that now, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a really nice size. You haven't kind of, I think 50 still feels like your tribe, your crew. But presumably over the next couple of years, that is going to change, and you are going to be, I wouldn't be surprised if we speak this time next year, you'll be maybe 100, 200 people. So how has that been for you, going from just you and a co-founder to now managing a whole team of people? And like, how are you dividing up responsibilities?
It's been a journey. I guess for me personally, it's been I don't know. It feels like an incredibly steep learning curve where I'm like slightly behind where I need to be all of the time. Before this, I've only ever been an IC designer. I think I've never really worked on a team bigger than 10 people before. I never hired anybody. So so much of this has been totally new to me. I'm fortunate that Chris, my co-founder, has run a team before. We've like hired like a vast our second engineer and now CTO has grown teams before. So like. I've got to learn from really great, from people who've been there before, kind of at all the stages, which is great. But yeah, it's like a constant. You have to constantly reassess, like what does my job need to be now? Because like it won't be the same as what it was a few months ago. And my way of doing that so far is to like feel on top of things, and then slowly I feel more and more like I'm drowning, and then at some point I reach a breaking point and I'm like I've got to like stop and figure out like, why is this not working? And usually it's because I'm trying to do too many jobs. I'm trying to be like a designer and a salesperson and a recruiter and a people manager, and the time has come where I need to give away a few of those jobs and then and then the cycle repeats.
I mean, it's a really common thing. I mean, again, as you're growing as a founder, you start by having to do loads of things because you don't have the time, the budget, the resources to have dedicated people. And often the founders become blockers. They become kind of that bottleneck. But eventually, when you break through, if you're growing fast enough, you can hire that person who is looking after your HR. You can hire that person that is maybe doing more of the operational side of things. You can hire that person that's now a product manager who, you're still giving input to the product, but now you've got someone doing the admin and kind of like, hoping to make your life easier. But it's really, really tough. And I think, going from a space where, everything came from you to having now a team full of people, it does require quite a lot of change. I think that's one of the most challenging things. Like, I think a lot of founders worry about whether their company is going to be a success. But when it becomes a success, you've got to worry about like, how are you going to be able to scale and keep scaling and keep changing. And I think you are probably in a space where every 4 or 5 months you're actually doing a fundamentally different job to what you're doing before. And it sounds like you're keeping up, but it can be stressful. Have you got any kind of tips or strategies or recommendations for other founders about how you kind of stay on top of stuff?
I don't know that I'm a great role model to look at. I do think things I wish I'd done earlier was bring on team members outside of product engineering design, like folks like the folks in operations that we brought in have like made such a difference. They take a thing that we were doing extremely badly and they do it well, and they also just free up so much of our time that it's just been a great thing every time someone's come in to help with that stuff.
What you said there, I think, is really important. Like I meet so many founders. I think particularly it's areas they don't like doing. Like if you're a product or design founder, often sales and marketing or operations and HR aren't the thing that you love, and so you want to be spending more of the time doing the stuff you're really good at. And so it's really tempting to like, well, let's just hire a whole bunch of people around that. However, until I think you've done that job yourself, it's really hard to hire the right person because you don't if you don't fully understand the job, you just give it over to somebody wholesale. And quite often I find that first sales hire, that first marketing hire, that first product leadership hire often doesn't work out because you haven't figured it out yourself. And like I think a lot of the time as a founder, you need to get it to that kind of messy 80%. And once it's there, you can hand that thing over to somebody else, particularly with sales. I think, if you're not doing founder-led sales, if you're a B2B company, like expecting someone just to come in and sell for you when you haven't kind of built that playbook. And so it sounds like you're doing the right thing. And I'd weirdly argue that you are a good role model because like you're figuring this stuff out as you go along, but it sounds like you're making the right decisions. And when you're making wrong decisions, because no one's perfect, I'm sure there's been a bunch of wrong decisions, a bunch of wrong hires, but it sounds like you're flexible enough to realize that and bounce back. one of the things I was going to say, because like I meet a lot of founders who they really miss the early days. They really miss the days when there was like just 10 people in a room. And so they try and hold on to that for much longer than is practicable. And often the rest of the organization breaks because at some point you can't run a 50-person company with a 10-person mindset. You definitely can't run a 100-person company. And it sounds like you've been willing to kind of make those leaps. So kudos to you.
Thank you. Yeah, honestly, when we were tiny, I dreaded the idea of being 50 was like, oh, geez, I don't know if I ever want to go there, you know?
And when you're 200, you'll be like, I can't imagine being 1,000. And when you're 1,000, you'll be like, I can't imagine being 5,000.
Yeah. But we've been lucky to find really, really great people who are like just really fun to be around, but also incredibly great at what they do. And so by and large, when we hire people, we're hiring people that are better than us. And so like, I feel like the quality of what we're able to do goes up when as the team's grown. It's just like, rather than everything having to go through Chris and I at the very beginning, it's like now there's like 5 amazing things going on at any given time, it's like something to behold.
I mean, yeah, in my previous company, I always used to say that I'd always hired people better than me, which made me the worst person in the company pretty much, because everyone else that hired in later was always doing a better job.
You're the one person who sees across everything, you know?
Which is really helpful, because it's kind of like nobody expects you in this day and age to know everything. I think this is kind of this myth that the founder has every detail under control, but what you do is you have the high level view. You're standing on the shoulders of other people in a positive way, but you're able to kind of understand how these different things fit together, and you're often a coordinating factor. So I think it's a great attitude. Do you have other people in your corner? Do you have a coach? Do you have a mentor? Are there founders you look up to? Like, how active are your investors in terms of like helping you through these challenges? Because obviously there's a lot of people that have kind of been through this process before, and so I think a lot of founders often feel that they're quite alone, and so it's important to have that network around you.
Yeah, I could probably do more of this. Our investors are great. Mike from Lightspeed and Nabil from Spark are both we're really close with them. We talk with them a lot. Anytime we have any kind of big strategic question, they're usually the first people we go to. And they've both been founders, and they've also they invest in a lot of companies like us, and so they can pattern match across those. And then I think a thing which I probably underinvested in, which I found really helpful, is just having founder friends. Ideally founder friends who are like a couple of years ahead of you, or like a stage ahead of you, maybe. Not too far ahead, but they went through the pain that you're going through like a year ago or something like that. I don't know, when we were thinking about starting to hire for sales, and like, should we do that in the UK? Should we do that in the US? And if the US, should it be San Francisco, New York? And I had breakfast with the Incident.io founders who'd been through the similar dilemma like 6 months ago or something like that. And just hearing through their thought process was super helpful there. And, there aren't like many people in the world who have to grapple with these problems, and so like finding the right people for you and then being close to them, I think really, really helps.
I think you're right, and I also kind of like have this sort of belief that the half-life of information is quite short, and so a lot of VCs, they might have been founders 10 years ago, but the amount of relevant knowledge, like the landscape has changed so much that actually there's probably very little that is the same in go-to-market, in engineering, whatever. But if you're talking to someone that's a year ahead of you, they're still kind of, the stuff that they're tackling is incredibly relevant, and things have only shifted a little bit. So I think having a really good network of other founders is hugely important. I'm kind of curious. So 2 things, like obviously you're a founder and you're a designer. From a designer's perspective, if there was another young designer listening to this and they're like uhhing and ahhing about like whether they should kind of quit their job and start their own kind of startup, like, do you have any sort of advice or thoughts like of like whether designers make particularly good founders and whether they should consider going down that route?
Yeah, good question. I mean, this will depend on the kind of company you're interested in, but for a lot of companies, and definitely like Granola, the whole game at the beginning is building something great that people really want to use. And a lot of design is like understanding a user's problem and then figuring out the shape of the thing to fit that problem. And so like I think a lot of the initial process of building a company is the design process, like the two are the same basically. We're also at this beautiful time where like designers can build stuff without having to learn too many extra things. So I think it's like there's never been a better time to be a designer if you want to start something. a thing that I think I found about like building Granola that I haven't encountered to such a degree before in all my other design roles was like you really like feel like there's nowhere to hide building a product from scratch. If nobody likes the thing that you're building, you just it's kind of brutal, you know. Like they don't use it. The feedback loop is like incredibly intense and powerful. And I've in previous jobs, you know, where I've been a designer on a more established team, you're a little bit insulated from that. Like you don't feel the pain internally of your thing not working so well. And so I love that about building a company is like that I feel the friction of the real world, and I like to get the you know the work I produce is like really tested by reality, and you know if it's good it works, and if it's not good that I very quickly learn about it. But I also think that's kind of a tough it's a tough thing to have to contend with, you know, when you're used to being a bit more insulated in a design team.
I mean, I think you're absolutely right about the value design can bring. Designers are really great at understanding user needs, the empathy, the kind of like the ability to sort of put yourself in their shoes. I think, you know, these days with so many competing products around, like often the product that has a better user experience is the one that people fall in love with. There are also other ways of being successful. You know, there are plenty of products that are much better that wither on the vine because their distribution or their sales or whatever hasn't worked. But I think really leaning into building an amazing experience is really positive. But also, like at the same time, I think, you know, being a designer, you can obsess over things that aren't that important, or there is a risk that, you know, we can be a little bit kind of quite dogmatic around like, well, this is absolutely the right thing to do for the user. And I'm kind of wondering, like, are there particular things being a founder that you've had to go a different route that you might have gone like 2 or 3 years ago if you were working for another founder and you were a designer? Like, have you advocated for things in the past that you're like, oh, actually, I can see why that doesn't work, you know, and because I've now got my business head on?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. I think, there's no way I could have like Granola would be here without Chris, and like on the product building side, I think Chris brings like he's incredibly good at keeping us honest to like what's the actual problem the person has, and like are we really solving it? Which for us, you know, is like at the beginning it was just is the set of notes at the end of the meeting actually useful for the person, and that was more of a like prompting, like the solution to that was good prompting, more than it was where the pixels were on the screen, you know, and of course my brain is programmed to go and fuss over the pixels, and it still honestly needs like constant dragging out of that into thinking about like the real problem, and you know, yeah, I think that's I don't know, I wouldn't be here without like that force like, keeping me honest.
I mean, I think a pairing of someone that's a bit more kind of business focused with someone that's a bit more user focused keeps everyone kind of balanced and sort of working well together. So that sounds like a really, really good pairing. And I think having a good coach, like being a founder can be quite tough. It can be quite lonely. You know, I end up working with a lot of like solo founders, and like that can be quite tough. And so it's really good that you found someone that can be a bit of your, you know, yin to your yang, or however it works. You just touched on something earlier, like I'm just kind of wondering, like, how much has AI and prompting found its way into your design and engineering process? Like, are all of your designers now kind of like, you know, they're prompting you features, or is it still a bit more traditional? Like Figma is the main tool. How are your product managers kind of dealing with this? Like, obviously, you know, I spoke to Desert Intercom recently, and they've gone full in on the idea of like AI designers who really understand the materiality and have a whole range of tools that are outside Figma. So I'm just curious your take.
Yeah, probably similar. Like, I guess a third of my time is still design, and like of that, 70% is in Cursor or Claude Code, and 30% is in Figma maybe. And I think, yeah, it's fairly true of the other designers too. Actually, like it depends on the problem and like what you use different tools for different jobs. Tanya, one of our designers at the moment, is working on a feature and basically entirely in like in code. You know, she's not touching the code, but you know, like in a prototype that she's built, and is trying out variations of with Claude Code and Cursor and stuff. But then equally, like Rue, one of our other designers, is working on stuff where like it's a more complex like system design problem, and so actually seeing it all mapped out on a canvas is like, and figuring out how the pieces fit together is most of the problem, and the small interaction details don't matter so much. So yeah, I think it's just like we have a bunch more tools at our disposal now, and I think for me, the like coming up with perfect mocks in Figma is a waste most of the time now. I use Figma the way I would use a whiteboard, just slightly higher fidelity, and then as soon as you go from like the expansion part of the design process or whatever, and you get into the contraction part, that contraction part is all code, like for me now. Yeah.
And it makes sense considering where Granola started as a home coded sort of product. So so look, thank you so much. It's been really nice chatting to you. If people want to sort of follow you, if people want to kind of follow your founder journey, where's the best way people can kind of keep tabs on you?
Yeah, well, I use Granola to start with, and we have like a beta channel. You could turn that on and join our community, and you'll kind of be abreast of the new stuff there. Yeah, and then I don't really have personal channels. Like, I don't know, you could follow me on LinkedIn, I guess, but all of my time and effort is put into Granola, and so whatever we're coming up with next is like the the thing to be followed along with.
Brilliant. Well, look, I mean that's great to hear. You're so focused on Granola. You're not kind of spending all your time on social. You're kind of like you're pushing the company forward. So look, it's been an absolute delight chatting to you. Thank you so much for the time.
Likewise, Andy. This is really fun. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Brilliant. And to everyone who's been listening, thank you so much for tuning in to the Design VC. If you enjoyed the episode, please do subscribe, leave a review, share it with someone you think might find it really interesting, particularly anyone that's interested in the intersection of design, startups and venture. And I've been Andy Budd, and I'll see you next time.